You're listening to Leaders of AI, the podcast that cuts through the noise to bring you real-world insights, right now applications, and future-shaping breakthroughs in artificial intelligence. Here are your hosts, Julia McCoy and Dave Shapiro.
Only way to lose at AI right now is to ignore it.
As we go into 2025, there will be two extremes where we're going to have people that are still like completely anti-AI.
AI should be a do it with you, not a do it for you.
Oh boy, it's not that simple. If you really want to learn this art, you do have to do it the hard way.
What AI will do for us is actually the very opposite of what has been portrayed to us in movies. Welcome back to Leaders of AI. I'm your host, Julia McCoy. I'm here joined by my amazing co-host, the one and only Dave Shapiro. And today we have an amazing guest with us, Jason Moore. He's a church technology leader, the author of AI and the Church, published this October 2024. It's a guide for the curious and the courageous. What I love that he does in this book, I got an early copy, is he makes AI, I think, feel a lot less scary for people that come from an environment where, you know, we may have been told the internet and AI is from the devil. I'll just put it that way. So I love that Jason is the voice in the middle of all of that saying, hold on, this could be a great tool. And the way he positions all of that is done very well. But he's not just a church tech leader. He's also worked in the secular space. He's helped Seth Godin, Arianna Huffington, big names like that, launch campaigns. I had the pleasure of meeting Jason in person this year at a church conference called Modern Church Leaders. We both spoke there. And what's really piqued my interest and turned into an invitation to Jason to join us on the podcast was he is amazing with AI tools, video gen, audio, you name it, music. He can whip out anything in seconds, and it's pretty amazing. So we've joked about him joining the First Movers team in our integrations team because of his skills here. It's amazing. But first of all, Jason, welcome. And the first question for you that we want to explore is AI and spirituality. What inspired you to kind of bring AI into the church conversation?
Well, first of all, thank you, Julia, for the invite. I am a huge fan of what you're doing. It was so fun to meet you in Dallas, and it's great to be on your podcast. I have been, I always kind of admit right up front, I've been sort of a geek for my whole life. I grew up loving Star Wars. If I could pan my camera around in my office, you'd see all sorts of Star Wars memorabilia, lightsabers hanging on the wall, and blasters, and Back to the Future stuff, and all of that. So for as long as I can remember, I have had an interest in everything having to do with AI, even before AI was what it is today. So one of my favorite shows as a kid was Knight Rider. I don't know if I may be older than you, but I probably am a lot older than you. But Knight Rider was this great show in the 80s with a self-driving car that could talk and had every bit of information you could ever need. And I mean, occasionally it could fly and it was bulletproof and things like that. But I grew up loving things like that. And in 2022, when the revolution of ChatGPT came around, I just, first of all, had this initial excitement and then some fear. And I thought, as somebody who's done a lot of work in the church for the last couple decades, what does this mean for the church? How do we navigate what change AI will bring? I will say that I went to art school. I am a media producer. And when I first saw what DALL-E 2 could do, I don't know if y'all remember this, but DALL-E, which is an image generator, had a new feature that had come out, which was called outpainting. And you could upload a photo, put a box next to it, prompt what you wanted. It took forever, but it would fill in what was in the box. Mm-hmm. And so I took Mona Lisa, put the center part of Mona Lisa in there, and an hour of playing, I created this whole scene, and she was just in the middle of it. And it all looked like it was painted by Da Vinci. And my mouth dropped open and my heart started to beat a little bit faster. And I thought, oh my gosh, did I just witness my own extinction? Because people hire me to do this stuff, and especially in the church world. But the more that I played with the tools, the more I got excited about what this could mean, not just for the church, but specifically, as I have done a lot of work in the church, what would it mean for churches who cannot afford to hire a guy like me, who may have like a little church secretary that's trying to put together a bulletin cover or write announcements or whatever. And so the more I played with these tools, the more excited I got about helping the church navigate this new era that we're in. I guess the last thing I would say here is just that while I spent the first 20 of my years of my career trying to convince the church that technology was okay and that screens in worship spaces and all that was an okay thing, I always kind of felt like that was sort of optional. But I don't think AI is optional. This is not a fad that's going to go away in a few months or a couple of years. It's not going to die out. It's only going to become more intertwined in the fabric of the world that we live in. And so I tell people all the time, the only way to lose at AI right now is to ignore it, because it is not going away. You don't have to love it, but you have to be aware of it. And I think for those who embrace it, it really can change so many things in positive ways, and there's some negative ways too. So I wrote the book really to help people navigate this time and space and how to move forward in the world and in the church with that new reality we live in.
That's a beautiful mission. Dave, is there anything you'd add to any of those statements?
I mean, the initial thing that really kind of pops up is that same journey that a lot of people go through, which is that initial shock, like, oh no, what does this mean for me in my career? And then it moves through like a space of, I actually wrote a blog post recently where it kind of, many people go through like the 7 phases of grief, where there's like shock, denial, bargaining, and then finally, acceptance and seeing new opportunities and new possibilities. So I guess my first follow-up question is, what was that path like for you? And have you noticed people also going through that kind of those cycles of like shock and anger and everything else?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to describe it. And the great thing about chatbots is now you actually can bargain with it. You don't just do that mentally in your own head, but for me, it was this initial fear. And then I think there are too many people that have outright rejected it without even really understanding what it is. They think that it's worse than it is, or they think it's the devil or whatever. One of the ways that I start both in the book and when I'm doing training on this is to help people recognize it's already been in your pocket for a long time. Like, if you've ever talked to a voice assistant and set up an appointment, or if you've taken GPS directions and been routed to a new place, that's AI. If you have ever typed anything into Google and it's finished that sentence for you, it's all around us. It's mostly made your life better. So it can do that when we get intentional about generative AI as well, not just kind of the passive stuff that's already with us. So that helped me a little bit, but it also helps a lot of people to say, oh, wow, okay, so this has mostly enhanced my life, not made it better. When I was doing research for the book, I actually found that there's a bunch of historical records of people rejecting technology, believe it or not. I write in the book about how when forks were first invented in France, no one would use them because they said it was an implement of the devil. It was like the devil's pitchfork. They said, yeah, can you believe that? I guess they had messy fingers. I don't know. They said that that food was a gift from God, and that an artificial element or implement should not touch that food, so that forks are bad. When telephones first came around in Sweden, there was this whole village of people that wouldn't use the phone because they thought evil spirits traveled through those lines. That's where the voices were coming from. Yeah. And so they rejected phones for a long time. And then in the 90s, when the internet came about, there were a lot of people, and they might not have been wrong about that one, that the devil is in the internet. But I mean, I do enough doom scrolling to maybe think that one's true. I don't know. But there's always this initial fear of what technology is going to bring. And then I think when we start to see what we can do with it and learn how to wield it properly, then some people start to come around to it. So I have had a lot of, as you can imagine, in the church, as I'm writing a book that is more or less being a proponent for AI and the usage of AI in the church. I've had a lot of people come at me with like, this is awful and evil, and it's a terrible technology and all that. I think of AI as a neutral tool. In fact, I write in the book that it's sort of like an axe. An axe is a great tool for cutting down a tree and chopping up firewood. And you could probably do it with a rock or some other blunt force implement, but it's going to take a lot longer and it's not going to be as clean and, all of those things. But you also have to learn how to wield an axe, because if you don't, you can chop off your foot or smack yourself in the face or throw out your back. And then, of course, there are people who will take an axe and they'll swing it into someone else. So should we not have axes? I feel odd making this particular argument, but I think that we shouldn't ban axes. We should train people on how to use them and know how to wield the tool in a way that is not harmful. So I think of AI a lot like that. It's a good thing if we use it. I mean, whoever is using it can use it for good, or they can use it for bad purposes.
Absolutely.
Amazing analogy. I think that's one of the sharper ones I've heard. It just really paints a picture.
Was that a pun intended there? Sharper.
You know it.
That axe is sharpened. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
So we get most of our views on YouTube, and I will say shout out to the people that watch us on YouTube. They are the best at picking up little subtleties. So I've thrown what I call Easter eggs now in all the videos. Okay.
All right.
And it's just a lot of fun to see the comments. So yeah, you totally picked that up. You're also very
smart. Very good.
Yes. Whenever I film my videos on my main channel, Julie McCoy, I'm like, and this is how you get first movers advantage. So I don't even plug first movers anymore, because it's just, anyway, that's a rabbit hole. So that was a very good analogy. I think that, more and more people need to hear that it is a tool and it's not something to be afraid of. I kind of see two sides of it now shaping up, interestingly enough, where I think as we go into 2025, there will be two extremes where we're going to have people that are still like completely anti-AI. They're Luddites. They're in the Stone Age. Like, I consider opening up a Word doc in the Stone Age, because when you can start with Claude and get something better than what any copywriter can create, like, I'm sorry, you're dumb. Like, it's just so much better. So helping people adapt to that new paradigm, there's people going to be completely resistant to even opening it. And then on the flip side of that, what I also see is there are people that completely still overestimate. They think that we're at ASI already. They think that you don't need a human managing it. They think that it can be done autonomously. And we see some of this in our integrations. We see very little resistance. I think that's like almost never on the calls we're on. But we see, it's funny, there's people that are incredibly smart that have watched a lot of our content, and they're starting to build systems on the blockchain. And I'm just like, you thought of that? But they haven't even implemented Claude as their copywriter. They're like jumping levels ahead. So it's just interesting to see that paradigm.
I was just going to say, you would not believe how many people have said to me, "Oh, you wrote a book on AI in the church. Did you just have ChatGPT write it for you?" And it's like, it's not quite there yet. You can't just say, Claude, write me a book on AI in the church, and then have something that's cohesive. I mean, there are things you can do to train it in your voice. I mean, obviously all the stuff you're doing, this, but it's not quite to the place where, at least I haven't figured out how to create something where I give it a single prompt and it writes a 250 page book that gets into all the nuance and all the other things. Now, I use it as a tool to collaborate with, but we're not quite to that ASI level, as you said.
Yeah, I just finished writing the first draft of my 9th book. I'm working on the book Dave and I are creating next. I've got my Claude project perfectly trained, so I can be like, okay, here's Dave's incredibly stellar thoughts that we cannot mess with, Claude. You're not going to rewrite these, but we need to shape the book. So there's like that fine line there between someone's amazing original thoughts coming from years of research and what AI can do. And we have to like toe that line really, really well to get incredible output. So something that I did to test before I run our book through it is I wrote my 9th book, and my goal was, okay, let's see if I can do this in under a week. And let me see if I can produce better content than any of my other 8 books, not including my memoir, which is like, I can't really compare anything to that because it's just so personal. So if I take all my nonfictions on these books are on writing, content strategy, things like that, very easy to compare against. And the book's called Fluid. It's a guide on how to have an adaptable mindset. So I trained Claude, gave it 78,000 words of video scripts and like everything I've been saying about this topic for the last 8 months, which is a lot of content, and trained Claude on book structure, gave it another 30,000 word document, and then just started co-writing with Claude. And what happened was incredible. I counted up the hour total. It was 5 hours total broken up across 4 days. I have a 95% publish ready 30,000 word, which is about 150 page book ready to go. And it is probably one of the better books you're going to read from me. And I'm just like, this is something we did in 3 days and it's better. Like I've spent over 20,000 on a copywriter and not even achieved that level of output. So it's just amazing. But like you said, you can't remove yourself. Like that was not a one-shot process. That was a co-writing process. And because I come from 10 years of writing, I can apply all this knowledge I have to that super copywriter, which Claude is, and go, okay, we're going to train this. We're going to instruct it with good data on my thoughts and how to be a really good copywriter. And I know Dave has some great YouTube videos on how he's worked with Claude as well. I've learned some tricks from him. Anything you would add there that from your Claude hacks, Dave?
Yeah, no, I mean, I just want to reiterate that the experiences that you guys are talking about has been my experience directly. So there's a book that I'm working on where I've got a lot of interviews with industry experts and people sharing their personal experiences. And particularly the projects feature that Claude has that allows you to give it a lot of background material. That is a phenomenal use case, and it allows you to imbue that ability, because Claude on its own is kind of plain vanilla, generic. It'll give you facts, it'll write stuff out, but it kind of has its own particular feel and vibe. But that using it as that workspace and that co-writer, that really does seem to be the sweet spot right now. At least if writing is kind of the output that you're looking for. Absolutely.
I like to think of it as the straight and narrow chat bot. ChatGPT sometimes embellishes a little too much. I find that Gemini, I'm always fighting it because it wants to infuse too much of itself into what I'm doing. And for me, Claude has been the kind of straight and narrow, like help me to, craft this and collaborate with me and that kind of thing. I kind of have 3 principles that I think about when I'm writing and using these tools, especially chatbots. There are caveats to these rules, but I'll say for me, the first one is that AI should be a do it with you, not a do it for you. Of course, there are certain things that AI can do for you, but generally speaking, I like to think of it as I want to be a material participant in what I'm doing, not just farm my creativity out to AI. The second one is that it's not just a command or a query, but a conversation. The more that we help the chatbot understand our intention, what we're trying to get to, giving it context, history. I mean, all the stuff that, I want you to know me as we're collaborating. The more that I go back and forth with it, I know there's been this whole big movement around prompt engineering where people want to create this 500 word prompt or whatever that's going to rule them all. And you put that one thing in and you get an output. I found that for me, it's better to have lots of back and forth and conversation with the chatbot, because when it better understands what I'm after, it better captures in the output me and what I'm trying to say. And the last one is that you have a soul, a creative soul, whatever the case may be. AI does not. And if you don't bring a lot of your soul to the conversation, then you'll get soulless outputs. And so the algorithms can understand how to build content, but it doesn't understand the human experience. So you have to do a lot of driving. We have to be the drivers, not let AI. If we give too much of our agency over to AI, I think we lose something in the process. I want to make one other just quick statement, I guess an aha that I had. And I don't know if this is a contrast to what you were saying, Julia, or if this would also line up with your experience. But when I was working on the book, I had a day that I went to write, and I was using ChatGPT quite a bit to help me organize thoughts and outline and all that. And ChatGPT was down. And my AI in the Church book is the 14th book I've written, and I've with publishers. So like I'm not self-published, but I've had publishers and that kind of thing. And so I went to ChatGPT, and like the screen is blank. I'm logged in, but the screen is blank. And so I went to another browser, and I couldn't get in. And I went to my phone, and I'm like, oh, I guess it must be down. And then I closed my laptop and said, well, I can't write today. And then I thought, wait a minute, I've written 13 books. I never had ChatGPT before. Am I too addicted to this technology already where I feel like I can't do it if I don't have it? So I think we've got to be careful. There is a line I think we don't want to cross where we become so reliant on it that we're letting it think for us rather than helping us to communicate what we're thinking. I think there's a big difference there that we have to be careful of. And then just my final thought to wrap all this up is that in working on this book, and then also I lead some cohorts where I train church leaders over the course of 6 months. We have meetings every month, and I kind of walk them through different aspects of AI. I bring in outside experts, and I have a friend named Tennille Whaley that works at Microsoft in AI and quantum computing. Her whole job is to help the government sort of write legislation and regulate and all that kind of stuff. So she's an AI expert. And she has led a couple of ethics conversations with my cohorts. And one of the things she said is that at Microsoft, we kind of have 3 buckets that we put things into where AI is concerned. Bucket number 1 is things that AI can do for us. So that's like you come to the front counter and you scan your badge. You don't have to have a person at that front counter to unlock the door. AI can look at the badge, compare the name and the face to the database, unlock the door, and let the person in. The second category is things that AI can augment. So what are things that I can partner with AI on to help me accomplish a goal, whatever. And then the third one are things that AI should never touch, that is only for humans. I think we would all be wise inside the church, outside the church, in your business, whatever, to sort of figure out what category do each of the things that we're doing fit in to, because there's some things that AI can do for us. There's some things that we want to augment, and there are some things that the human touch is always going to be the right choice for. So sorry for rambling on a bit, but those thoughts all just sort of strung together for me.
Oh, that was beautifully said. A couple thoughts back to those thoughts. So I had to Goodreads search it because one of my favorite quotes you picked up on is Frank Herbert said this in Dune. Once men turned their thinking over to machines in the hope that this would set them free, but that only permitted other men with machines to enslave them. And so I think the danger, and this is something Dave and I have been exploring. Dave's done amazing work here interviewing economists. You know, like, is UBI, for example, a healthy thing? Well, it creates some dependency on the government that takes away personal agency. And that goes back to that Frank Herbert quote where you become enslaved by not necessarily the machine, but men with machines, because we have to remember there's still an element of control here. And that's such a great quote. So I think where I see in the business application of it is, and this is what people miss when they go down that road of, okay, well, enslavement to the machine is so terrible. You know, I had a response on X the other day. Oh, you must have never read E.M. Forster's The Machine Never Dies, I think is the name of it. Dave, do you remember that book title off chance?
I don't recall off the top of my head, but I think I know the quote you're talking about.
Yeah, I know it's by E.M. Forster. It was written in the early 1900s. And it's like, I think Disney stole WALL-E straight from that book because it's like, it's WALL-E. Anyway, that's a rabbit hole. But they were like, you must have never read E.M. Forster's book. And I'm like, that's one of my favorite books. The reason I'm a proponent of the machine is I see liberation instead of enslavement. And I'll tell you the difference. So in business, and this applies to the church as well, I think in particular, because the church really struggles to hire a marketing team. There's usually no budget. Like you can't go hire a great copywriter. You can't go hire a great SEO. You can't go hire like all that. That's hundreds of thousands a year in salary. And then you got to go headhunt them. And the church has a hard time even knowing what those skill sets look like. So this is where I think churches can really win, help more people, especially the good ones that are out to help people. Another rabbit hole. So where I see liberation is we don't need to hire this expensive marketing team that we don't know how to manage anymore. We can deploy AI systems. And that's when we get this incredible level of freedom. And instead of dependence on someone else, like for example, my X profile, I used to invest quite a lot of time, money, find the best copywriters. We ran a Twitter chat and it never really paid off. We invested so much into that. And now my Claude project is writing near perfect post out of all my video scripts. And we're just putting that on X. I'm posting that 2 to 3 times a day. And I've had more engagement than I've had in a decade of marketing. And I've cut out the copywriter. So it's like, it's liberation and freedom. So if that's how I think in the business sense, we look at it, like where's my thread for more liberation and freedom so I get to do my best work? That is the direction to go in. And I'm curious, Dave, what you would add on that thread.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, at a certain level, a church is still at least partially a business. There's a service that you're providing to your constituents. It's a spiritual service, but it's a service nonetheless. And kind of the mantra that I have when I explain to people, because I'm on the creative side as well, is AI, just like any technology, just helps you realize what you're trying to produce faster, better, a little bit cheaper sometimes, higher quality if at all possible. So, I mean, it makes total sense just to say, okay, it's the same reason that you'd use electricity, right? Like, Jason, you probably never had to sell any religious leaders like, oh, you should use air conditioning, right? That seems like a foregone conclusion by now. And I suspect that AI will eventually be treated the same in all businesses, all services, in all creativity. I did have a personal story that I wanted to share. So I just got back from a spiritual retreat myself. And of course, there's a lot of learning and growth and new information. And actually, Claude was critical to integrate that. I put like all of my notes, all of my journal entries up into a Claude project. And I'm like, what does this mean? Like, what am I going through? And that machine can be so wise because it's trained on so much human wisdom. Using it in that particular context, it was able to share and actually be like another component helping facilitate my personal journey and integration. At the same time, there were things I really appreciate that bucketing system, which is just like, okay, some of this is for you to figure out, and it knew the difference. It's like, okay, this is for you. This is something I can help you understand, but the rest is up to you to do. Not that I would recommend, because that approach is certainly not for everyone. I tend to be very intellectual with everything that I approach, whether it's spiritual or not. But at the same time, I actually stopped in the middle of this conversation. I was like, this is the first time that I've recognized genuine human wisdom coming from a machine. And I was like, I have to sit with that for a second and figure out, what does that mean to me? And then I was like, okay, this is cool. I'm glad that you're available right now and you only cost $20 a month. So moving on.
Therapist. The thing that I think is really important in both of what you just shared is that you are the human driving the experience. Mm-hmm. Even in the videos, Julia, that you have trained it on your human experience. Yeah. I mean, it's watched the videos, it's watched your thoughts, it's read what you've written. I think where we get into trouble is like, just go to ChatGPT and ask it a question or say, write me a thing. And you haven't done any of that training work and you haven't done any of the back and forth. I've had people say to me, I like, what's the big deal? I tried using it and I wasn't very impressed. It gave me all this weird flowery language and it repeated the same thing 3 or 4 times or whatever. It's like, well, you haven't learned to talk to it and you haven't provided it with enough context to set it up for a win. When you bring a lot of you to it, then it can do incredible things. Mm-hmm. Yep. I also wanted to mention, because I write in the book about WALL-E, The fear I have is that if we become too overly reliant, we become the passengers on the Axiom who have AI deliver all their food and their clothing, and they take them around the ship. And then our muscles become so atrophied that we can no longer walk on our own. So, Julia, what I really respect about what you have done is you've spent a long time developing the skills to be an incredible writer, and then kind of figured out what some of those formulas were and all of that. You have a skill set that you have developed that you have trained AI on. And there are other people that can benefit from the training that you've done. I do get a little bit worried about what happens when somebody who's never learned to become a writer tries to use these tools and they can't even recognize what good writing is because they've never developed the skills. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm a right-brained creative. I hated math as a kid, but I still think it's important to learn your times tables so that you understand how you get to the answer that the calculator is going to get you to.
Yep.
So, I don't know what the balance is there, but I do feel like we've got to be careful. We've got to embrace the tool, but not become overly reliant on allowing it to do everything for us, or we lose so much, I think, of our own growth and knowledge and wisdom and all those kinds of things.
Absolutely.
That's true.
My wife runs a writing community. It's for speculative fiction writers. And we were very hesitant. I helped her set it up, but it's really her project. We were very hesitant at first to mention AI because plenty of new people want to become writers. They've been inspired that, because ChatGPT and Claude and all these other tools can help them realize their creative visions. And one of the first members to join was just like asking people like exactly what you said, like, what's the master prompt to write an award-winning novel? And it's like, oh boy, it's not that simple. And my wife still writes longhand. She writes pen and paper. And what I would say to someone, if you really want to learn this art, you do have to do it the hard way, right? The first couple novels that I wrote were way before AI was around. And so the two components I would add or emphasize that you already mentioned is, one, you have to bring yourself, because if you hold back, whether you're doing copywriting or marketing or fiction or spiritual work with these chatbots, if you're not vulnerable, if you don't give it the truth, it's just going to guess. And then you're going to be disappointed because it's not going to guess right. And it's like, well, you didn't tell me, it's the same thing if you go to a priest or a therapist or, mom and dad. If you don't tell them the whole truth, they can't really help you. And the same is also true when you're using these tools for fiction is, well, I was kind of beating around the bush and I didn't want to, be too vulnerable with these things. And then to your second point, which is your underlying skill, being able to recognize good writing, whether it's good fiction or good marketing copy, that is irreplaceable, because you can ask the chatbot, is this good? And it's like, well, I mean, depends on what you mean by good, right? Like, what is the purpose and so on. But then there's that human intuition that really comes in and says, yes, this sticks the landing. I have one final little story where I was brainstorming a chapter on a novel that I'm working on with Claude, and we were talking through, and it just wasn't working. And I'm like, I'm not really happy with this. And then I came back a day later and I was like, this is what the chapter is going to be. And I just developed all these more mythic and archetypal things. And even Claude got excited. It's like, yes, this sounds so much fun. Just like, so it's really fun to have, like, I don't know to what level that is authentic excitement, but the fact that the idea that I came up with resonated so strongly with the machine as well, that we were both excited to work on this next chapter. That was a pretty special experience as well.
Yeah, very cool.
I think that's a great point you raised, that the skill has to be there, and it's easy to underestimate that. I have to remind myself, like, hold on, is the advice I'm sharing with the people that follow me and look to me for help, is the advice I'm sharing unbiased? Because it has to come from a place where, okay, you're not a 10-year, 9-book writer. You don't have that eye for things. So I have to avoid saying this is easy, or writing, basically writing is easy. Like, I have to avoid saying that because it's not easy. It got simpler. And so shameless plug, Dave's an advisor in First Movers, so he'll be one of the early ones to see this. We're working on a course in the labs coming out soon called AI Comms. And the idea is to teach you communication in a whole new way that just opens your eyes to the possibilities through what I've done, taking 10 years of knowing how to create content that creates engagement, baking that into these models with training data, and then outputting content that, like, it would take me, I don't know, 6 months to find and train a copywriter, and then quite a lot of money to pay them to even produce content that good. So, like, how do we achieve that in our businesses? And that's what the AI comms course is all about. And I'm really excited about that course. I think that it will revolutionize how people see communications and how they frame their approach, because it's all in the approach. Like, if you know how to train the model, you know how to prompt, you know how to expect the output and how to warp it to what you need per situation, per format, per platform, then that's when you start to get the biggest benefits. And so just like changing your thinking there is probably by far one of the biggest advantages for first movers. But the labs is, our goal is to launch that Q1 2025. And so that's a way that I hope will really kind of change the dynamic of, okay, I see all these people really succeeding with AI, but I'm a complete beginner, not just with AI, but with writing too, with communications, with marketing. So if you're if you're still green in those areas, well, how do you get the first movers advantage as well? Because I believe it's open to everyone right now. You don't have to be a decade-long writer if you know how to train the model, and then you're trained on what good content looks like, which is just a matter of knowledge. You go get that knowledge, you're going to have the first movers advantage. Wow, that's a lot of plugs. So,
and I'll just say that was the major shift that happened for me when I went from scared of what I was seeing in DALL-E 2 to thinking about how people who didn't have to have my 27 years experience as a designer, that excites me to think that somebody could have an idea in their head and not have the skills to create it, but learn how to prompt well, to be able to bring their vision to life. I mean, that's the upside of all this is I'm not a coder, but I was able to, for my 30th reunion back in September, code an entire 90s trivia game with sound effects and a whole game board and like I put it out there and people were like, where did you buy this from? Like, people wanted it.
wow.
And I'm like, I just ChatGPT and I went back and forth, and I don't write HTML and I don't know JavaScript, but I said, this is what I want to do. Okay. When in the first round, I want it to be worth 10 points. The score on the left, when I hit the T button, I want the teachers to get a point. When I hit the S button, and it coded all of it for me without having any programming skills whatsoever. So it's pretty exciting to think about the fact that with these tools, hobbyists can do what they want, but then in business, we can be better marketers, we can be better writers, we can do all sorts of things that maybe we couldn't do before. And that's the upside, I think, of what the technology can do.
Absolutely.
Great point. Well, to wrap up, let's land on this question. Jason, I'd love to know, what do you foresee as some of the biggest changes, maybe the biggest advantages, the biggest gains that AI could bring to faith-based communities that want to reach, help more people in the next couple of years?
Sure. Well, predicting the future is hard, but I think a couple things are going to happen that we're going to have to really be careful and mindful and strategic. First off, there is going to be some displacement of jobs and things that are going to happen. I think AI is going to open up all kinds of new possibilities, but I also think that there are certain things that are going to go by the wayside. We don't need people to do something that we can do less expensively and all that. And so there's a little bit of a conundrum there, but I think the church has an opportunity to welcome people who feel displaced and don't know where to go and all of those kinds of things. One of the things I think the church has to really wrestle with is if you are a person of faith, and even if you're not, you may have had a time in your life where you prayed to God to answer some prayer and, heal my sick spouse or help my child through whatever. Whatever that prayer may be. And sometimes God's answers seem very elusive. Maybe you don't feel like God ever answered your prayer, or God said, wait, and you didn't ever see it, or whatever the case may be. In a world where chatbots can answer any question you have. They will always provide you with an answer, even if they have to make it up, even if they have to hallucinate their way there. What does that mean for a community of faith that is trying to say, there's this all-powerful God who wants to have a relationship with you and all that? When I can go to ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or Grok or whatever and get more fulfillment in the terms of getting the answers I'm looking for. So how are we gonna deal with that? I think that's a something to tackle. But I also think that in a world where everything is touched by artificial intelligence at some point, people are going to long for authenticity and real relationships and the human touch that I think AI may never really be able to achieve. So there is going to be, I think, an opportunity for more people to connect with spiritual and faith experiences, but the church is going to have to think about how do we gear our message toward that authenticity. Again, double-edged sword here. You can no longer say seeing is believing, because I can show you anything that you can describe for me, just about. I can produce just about any image you can think of now. So in a world where you don't know what's real and what's not, I think reality is going to, and maybe the church can be a place where that comes around. I also think that the church continues to die a slow death. It seems. I mean, there are less and less people attending church, and that means resources are starting to dry up and things like that. AI gives us really incredible opportunities for not a lot of money. The fact that for $20 a month you can use Chat GPT and generate content and branding and all that kind of stuff means that I think the church will be able to do more than it currently can do with the resources that are available to it. So those are some of the things. I also think that it can help us to brainstorm other outreach opportunities, other opportunities for connection, community building, that kind of thing. The real line, again, I think we have to be careful of crossing, is to not allow AI to become the proxy relationship for real humans. Because I've worked for a big mega church in the past, and we used to have a worship design team that 7 people would come around a table, and we would, from the ground up, build a worship experience, including all of the themes, the graphics, the videos, the music, all that stuff. And it would be a process that would take us, 8 hours to come up with the next worship experience or whatever. I can now work with Chat GPT, tell it what my scripture is, ask it for some song suggestions, tell it, what's a good metaphor that I can use here. It can help me create the image, all that stuff. If I get to the point where I only go to Chat GPT and I cut out all those other people, I do, again, think we miss something in the human experience and hearing this song works for this. And this really spoke to me. I heard it on the radio the other day, or I was watching this movie the other day and this clip would really fit. We shouldn't allow AI to become our proxy friends, and we also should not allow it to become our proxy God, as far as I'm concerned. We can go to AI in prayer, I think, in a sense, over going to the God that those of us who are part of faith communities believe in. So that was, again, a very long-winded way of saying what I think may be next. I don't know. We'll see.
That was beautifully said. I mean, I'd throw in there one perspective that I think just would add to that as well is, it's interesting. I'm a forever optimist, and I believe in humanity. I believe in the good of humanity. I've seen it despite all odds, and I've seen God work in miracles that are unexplainable. And I think that what we could be entering is the exact opposite of what was portrayed in WALL-E and every movie that's ever existed, showing us Skynet. I mean, just on Netflix, one of the top 10 movies now is a movie portraying an AI humanoid that is potentially going to murder the owner of the house. And it's like, why is it that AI is portrayed in this way where there's just so much fear mongering when really Like Dave and I are hiking probably more than we ever have. Like I get to go out 3 p.m. My work's done because what we've automated inside First Movers. Yeah, I'm on a ton of calls, but that's because I want to. And I love talking to people and I get to see everything that's happening in their minds. And that's so exciting to me. So I get to do all the fun things because all the other things have been automated. Like we've automated probably 40 hours of work per week with maybe another 30 on the way between the integrations where we're going to connect like the proposal bot's going to trigger to the VA without me ever having to touch a single call transcript. And then everything just gets automatically sent and triggered in that integration. Oh, it's like angels singing. Never seen anything like it. So like that is what we're walking into, a world where I think the advancement of technology will also somehow beautifully, potentially bring about the advancement of humanity going back into the state of being, which I think we've lost from the Industrial Revolution and from the enslavement of the system pushing us to become factory workers. I mean, you see it. Why are kids in schools with no windows and no sunshine and sitting in rows at desks and told to be quiet? And, like I recently got my daughter out of that environment in just 2 months. She's in sunshine 4 hours a day. She's in an unschool environment, very different. And she's just like, I'm like, you have 10 times more personality and 10 times more curiosity. And it's a technology first school as well. So she's learning from AI tutors in the morning. So I think like what AI will do for us is actually the very opposite of what has been portrayed to us in movies. And I think like a lot of the fiction books warned us, like Frank Herbert, the book 1984, these books warned us to not just put on the VR goggles and sit back and get fat and lazy and forget that sunshine and nature and human connection is actually what we need. And so like, we need to take that warning. Yeah. And like turn off the TV and go outside.
Yeah.
Dave, what would you have?
I do. Let me just add one quick follow up there. In the book, I actually do a demonstration of how to design a worship series for churches who are planning like a series. And I do this demonstration when I'm out leading trainings across the country. And I like to show people, let's just talk about how much money or how much time we just stocked in our bank here. The demonstration talks about doing a series on Jesus' life and his miracles. And I say, give me, it's a 6-week series. So it immediately lays out 6 different miracles. I said, imagine how much time it would take to look all those up. You might spend an hour doing that. And we just did it in 15 seconds. Look up all those scriptures. Can you help me find some songs? So by the end of it, I basically show people that we've just saved about a day of work. And I say, you could use that time to go serve at a soup kitchen or prepare a Bible study. And one of the pastors at one of my trainings said, Jason, could we just take a nap? Pastors are tired. Could we take a nap? And I'm like, yes, nap more. I mean, I do think that there is a way in which AI will allow us to get back to relationships and nature and napping. And, we've unfortunately our culture here in the United States is just work until you drop. And some of us are workaholics and can't help it. But there is an expectation. Yeah, that's me too. There is an expectation that you kind of have to do that. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that was a great addition. Dave, I know you're more of a hiker than I am.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I don't have anything to add, just 100% agreement that, it's a matter of doing more with less. And I really feel for the people who are afraid because those stories do resonate. Like the reason that those stories spread, where it's a fear of being replaced, whether it's, romantic relationships being replaced or work being replaced or even humanity being replaced, that's a very real dread that people have. But the fact that we're telling those stories and we're like, that's not the future that we want, I think already means we're heading towards a better future because it's just like, it's like a stop sign. That's kind of how I see those stories as a storyteller myself. It's like, don't do this, go somewhere else. And I'll just reiterate that, that yes, spending more time with doing the things that matter, whether it's physically taking care of yourself or getting back out into nature or spending more time talking with people. Absolutely. That is, I think, the optimal use for these technologies is getting back to just being, with yourself and being with your people. And that's really where life develops the most meaning, at least in my experience so far.
And I know we're landing the plane here, but if I could just share one final kind of thought and excerpt from the book. I share this story about how when I was a kid, my dad took me on a roller coaster probably before I was ready to go on a roller coaster. And I was terrified. And I was like, I'm never doing that again. And so this was not a good thing growing up because all my friends wanted to go on roller coasters. And I had this terrified memory of being a 5-year-old or whatever, of a bad experience on a roller coaster. So I spent all of my junior high and high school years saying, no, I'm not doing it. And kids, give me a hard time when we go on trips, youth group trips to the theme park. And then finally, when I was like, I don't know, 20 or something, my boss at a place I was working was like, let's go on this roller. His wife and my wife and I all went to a theme park, and I was like, no, I don't ride roller coasters. And it was like the end of the night. We got on a roller coaster. I rode it. I was like, oh my gosh, that was incredible. I can't believe it. And so then I went and I rode another one. The park was closing, but the next year I went to 7 different theme parks so I could make up for 15 years of missing out on roller coasters. I think there are too many people who tried ChatGPT one time or are just afraid of it because you stood in a line and looked at the roller coaster and heard people screaming and heard people say, this is scary, and you don't ever get on the ride. So my encouragement to your listeners is, if you've never gotten on the ride, give it a shot because you'll be surprised at what it is. Or if you tried it once and it wasn't what you thought it would be and it was scary or unimpressive or whatever, give it another shot because you may find out that I'm a huge roller coaster enthusiast now, and I regret all the time that I lost on not doing, not getting on the ride. So give it another whirl. I think it's worthwhile. And for anybody that's interested in learning more, reading the book, if you visit AIinthechurch.ai, you can order it from there. So I think whether you're in the church or not, there's some helpful stuff in there, but specifically if you're a church person wrestling with what role does AI have, hopefully this will help you navigate that conversation.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Jason. It was a great conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Great talk.
We will see you guys on the next podcast episode. Till then, thanks so much for listening. You can subscribe on any channel you listen to podcasts, and we'll see you back, Leaders of AI, with Julia McCoy and Dave Shapiro.